curiouser and curiouser, puzzling and more puzzling. What's going on, everyone? I'm Jay. Welcome to Square Pegs. Today we are taking a look at the greatest puzzle games from each console generation. This is a definitive list. This is the end-all, be-all. If you disagree with this, that's perfectly okay, because this is just my opinion. I'm not the authority on this. These are just the games that I prefer. These are my favorite puzzle games from each console generation. You're obviously going to have your own, and I would love to know what those are. Let me know in the comments down below. You know, I think the best puzzle games really take what is just a core, simple concept and are able to make it something more than what it first appears. I initially wanted to start this in the Atari 2600, and I was going to put Breakout on here, but the more I thought about it, the more I kind of figured Breakout's less puzzle solving and more just kind of getting lucky with the angle that you take on the ball you shoot. So Breakout gets an honorary mention here. It's not going to be featured or shown any footage, but I think it's right to start with one that so many of us really experienced first, and that's Tetris. And there are so many great options of Tetris, so many different variations that are out there, but from Generation 3 for me, and I think for so many of us, the one that really got it started for us was Tetris on the Game Boy. I had never played too many puzzle games before that. I had played a few, but none that really caught my eye or were terribly memorable to me, but Tetris was something altogether new and altogether different. This was an absolutely obsessive game to play. It was something where the concept was so simple, make a line and the line will disappear, but it was so difficult to pull off based on the different shapes that were tossed down the board for you to try to place. And we all know Tetris, we all love Tetris because it is just, simply put, a great game. It's never something I've been terribly expert level at. I've always been pretty average at best at Tetris, but it can't be denied at how great it is. This is something that bridges gaps in generations, bridges gaps in pretty much anything. I love this one, my wife loves this one, my son loves this one. Everyone I know who has ever played Tetris, at the very least, appreciates it for what it is. There were many other puzzle games released in Generation 3, but there are none that can stand anywhere close to what Tetris brought to the industry. Going to fudge the numbers a little bit here, but I'm going with Generation 4 being the Amiga, because hey, why not, right? It's my video. If you disagree with this, put your own one on here. This was originally going to be the Lost Vikings on the SNES, but I started thinking about some of the great puzzle games I played on PC at the time, or at least on the Amiga at the time, and the one that kept coming back to me, the one that I kept thinking about, was Lemmings. What a great concept for a game. Take a completely falsified theory on what Lemmings do that was apparently manufactured by the Walt Disney Corporation back in the 50s, slap a video game on it, and give each of these little rodent guys that appear one of 8 different abilities that you're able to assign. You can have them climb, which allows them to go up if they hit an overhang. Floaters will use a parachute to fall safely from heights. Bombers explode after a 5-second timer, destroying themselves and any kind of terrain that's around them that can be blown up. Blockers will stand still and direct people in the other direction. Builders can build a stairway of 12 steps. Bashers, miners, and diggers dig horizontally, diagonally, and downwards. Lemmings was a very creative game and something that took what a puzzle game was and just tweaked it just a little bit to make it something new but still familiar. We all understood what these options meant. We all understood what these actions were. None of these were terribly, eye-opening or awe-inspiring or anything like that, but when you toss that into a game and you give these little creatures this ability to do these actions, it makes things a little more challenging, and it gets to be even more challenging the further you go when you have to balance things and make sure that you're getting the right number of lemmings through the gate. It's a very creative game and something that is still really fun to this day. Lemmings is a wonderful title and a fantastic puzzle game. So straight up, this is the Switch version of the game, but I originally played this back in Generation 5 on the PlayStation 1, and this is Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. And one of the things I love about this game is it takes what is essentially a core concept gameplay. You have gems drop down, you break the gems, you toss them over onto your opponent's side. Whoever side fills up first is the loser. But it takes that and puts its own creative spin on it by putting all of these amazing super deformed versions of Street Fighter and Darkstalkers characters into the game, have them act out a battle behind the scenes as you're dropping gems. So like as you attack somebody with your gems, your character will perform a combo attack on your opponent, and as you play, you're going to be able to eliminate the different counter gems that count down from 5. You're going to be able to use different diamonds that drop down to shatter gem colors to send them over to your opponent's side. It's a really simple game to understand. Like, looking at it, you can understand the core concept, but one of the things I really like is that each character has a particular move that they will perform. So if you do a huge combo, you're going to send over a particular pattern that is unique to each character. And I think that's a really creative take on what is essentially a simple puzzle game. Capcom does so much so well, and this is a great example of that, because they take what is a basic puzzle concept and they make it something special by putting the Street Fighter and Darkstalkers characters in there. It's less that the concept of the puzzles change and more that puzzle systems that we're familiar with get tweaked just a little bit. So rather than reinventing the wheel every console generation, we get improvements on what was a previous core gameplay concept. And Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo is a great example of that, as it borrows heavily from the Sega arcade game Baku Baku Animal. Moving up now to Generation 6 on the Dreamcast, and we are looking at what is one of my all-time favorite Dreamcast games, and this is ChuChu Rocket. This is one of the most basic puzzle games you will ever see. It's all about changing direction. That's all it is. You place panels on a map, you move the direction that your mice or the different cats that are on the level are moving, and you try to get your mice into the rockets before the cats eat them. That's it. That is the core concept. That is the entire gameplay aspect of what is ChuChu Rocket. Now, where the challenge comes in is where you need to think in all these different directions and figuring out where your mice are going to move before you lay your tiles down. It is not uncommon that you will start a level, launch your mice, and then have to restart it immediately because you didn't put a tile in the right location. And that's okay, because that is one of the most entertaining things about ChuChu Rocket, is trying to solve the puzzle for each level. It's an absolutely brilliant game with wonderful visuals, a great soundtrack, and a really creative method of laying out what the puzzle is that you need to solve. It's not an overly complex game. In fact, the Game Boy Advance version that released is almost one-for-one identical to what the Dreamcast version is, just with downgraded graphics. But the gameplay experience itself is spectacular. The Game Boy Advance version is fantastic. The Dreamcast version is fantastic as well. ChuChu Rocket is a can't-miss game. If you've never played it, you need to check it out because it is one of the best puzzle games ever released. One of my absolute favorite things about the Nintendo Wii is that developers got super creative with physics. And one of the best examples of that is in one of my favorite puzzle games on the console, and that is Boom Blox Bash Party, which is very difficult for me to say. This is like take 7. It's a magnificent game where you are going to be using the Wii Remote to throw a ball, to pull out a brick, to manipulate your environment, and to solve the puzzle of destroying everything on the screen, to making something be built, to removing things at different times. It's just a phenomenal title. It is one of the most fun games that you will play on the Wii. It's an absolutely spectacular game with truly creative gameplay elements that aren't really seen anywhere else. It's rare for a developer to take as high of an advantage of what the physics engine was capable of on the Wii by manipulating the Wii Remote for gameplay purposes. And Boom Blox, the original game, and the sequel that I'm playing here, Boom Blox Bash Party, are just A+ examples of what you can do when you put aside preconceived notions of what a console is capable of. Because when I first played the Wii, one of the things I was blown away with was how incredibly fun a game like Wii Sports was. It wasn't a looker, it wasn't this beautiful, amazing game. It just made use of what the physics engine was capable of on the Wii by manipulating the Wii Remote to do what you wanted it to. And Boom Blox and Boom Blox Bash Party perfected that. I personally prefer Bash Party just because I think it's a little bit more creative, but neither game are ones you can go wrong with. This is a fantastic physics puzzler that does incredible work with the Wii Remote. Absolutely worth checking out if you've never played it. When I do these videos, I don't tend to go back to the same franchise in a generation gap. I try to keep things locked down to a particular generation just because that's the best example of it, but I think it's only fair that for Generation 8 we bring in Tetris Effect Connected. either the VR version on the PS4 or the standalone versions that released on the Xbox One and the Switch that did not have the VR compatibility. It's just such a beautiful game. Now, this is classic Tetris gameplay. It's very, very easy to understand what's going on, but what the game does and what the game really perfected was by putting almost mission-like gameplay in place. You have particular things that you're going to need to complete for each level that you go through. There's almost a world map that you have to follow, and that's before we even get to the graphics. It's easy to overlook the visuals on a game like Tetris or in a puzzle game, but it's impossible to do it in Tetris Effect because it is just such a stunning visual masterpiece of a game. This is one of my favorite games released in Generation 8. Not just puzzle games, just period. One of my favorite games released in Gen 8. I think the PS VR version is probably the best just because it is an all-encompassing experience. You're able to look around and see the environment, and it's just stunning to take in. But any version you play is going to be worth your time. Tetris Effect Connected is an amazing experience. And finally, for Generation 9, I'm going to the Nintendo Switch and going back to what is easily one of my favorite games of the year, and that is Islanders. Now, this is a game that I discovered kind of accidentally. I saw it in an eShop sale. I thought it looked nice, like I thought the graphics looked good, but I didn't think it was going to become kind of an all-encompassing obsession that it became for about 6 weeks of gameplay. This was almost the only thing I played, and this is one of the best puzzle games I have ever played. It is one of my favorite Switch games. It is something I still go back to constantly, even months later, because I think it is just such a wonderful gameplay experience. And it's so easy to understand. You have buildings that you have to place. Each one has different properties. They're going to interact with different objects and different things in your Earth environment, that are going to either benefit or harm you based on how many points you need to acquire to get more buildings into your town. And it's one of the most just simple, easy to understand games. Like, you have houses, put the houses down. You get points for putting the houses down. And, oh, if I put the houses next to other houses, I'm going to get bonus points because when you have a house, you want a community. It's just a bunch of logical little steps that you need to take. But where the beauty of the game really comes in is when you start gaining the different complexities based on the higher end buildings that you're able to place, or the different environments or biomes that you're going to go to as you start to unlock more aspects of this world and as you start to unlock more aspects of what Islanders is. This is just such a remarkable game, and it is something that to me is almost a perfect video game. Like, I love everything about it. I have zero complaints about Islanders, even on bad runs where I'm like, God, this is pissing me off. It's still a great game. It is still a magnificent experience. And it is something that I so strongly suggest for people to try out and for people to play, that this is probably going to be one of my favorite games of all time, let alone just this year. Islanders is a picture-perfect game. There you have it, everybody. Generations 2 through 9, what I feel are the best puzzle games for each console generation. Now, I have not played every puzzle game. There are definitely going to be ones that I am missing, and I would love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments down below what are your favorite puzzle games from each console generation. I'm sure we're going to have a difference of opinion, and that is totally okay. If you're new around here or you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing. I do a couple of videos a week, and I'd love to have you stick around. Big thanks to my patrons and channel members that you guys are seeing on screen right now. None of this would be possible without them. So until next time, folks, I've been Jay. Remember to play more games, stay square, and take care. I'll talk to you soon.